All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here today. Sorry for the delay in starting. My name is Jonathan Powers. I'm the Federal Environmental Executive here at the White House Council on Environmental Quality. I wanted to thank everyone who's also joining us online. We're watching at whitehouse.gov/live. We are honored to have you here to honor an accomplished group of veterans who have been champions of change, Iraq and Afghanistan veterans who are advancing clean energy and climate security. And so I want to start off with a little personal story and why, for me, this is incredibly important. And I think one of the reasons that many of my fellow vets got involved in this, when I was a platoon leader in Baghdad, we were located right in the northern part of the city in a palace once owned by one of Saddam Hussein's sons. And at every evening at about 6:30, we would have, as the Iraqis who left working for us during the day would leave the base, we obviously knew many were leaving with ideas of where some of our equipment was and things of that nature. And it became very evident to us that within an hour of them leaving, many of those sites where our fuel trucks were sitting would get targeted. And so at 6:30 every night, it became routine. Those trucks would move to a different part of our compound. And for me, that was one of the first times that I really began to understand the issue of energy security, and came home and began to focus on the issues of climate security as well. And many of the champions who we're going to hear from today had very similar stories and very similar experiences as they move forward into doing the incredible work they're doing, both in industry and advocacy, to try to change the national dialogue on what we're doing on these issues. So I'm going to start off quickly with some housekeeping items. One, please save your questions for the designated times, and we'll have microphones that will go around because this is live online. Two, we'll also be taking questions from our online audience who can join us in the conversations and tweet using the hashtag #ActOnClimate. ActOnClimate is the hashtag. And there are no designated breaks during the event, but if you need to step out, please feel free to do so. There'll be some pretty obvious breaks between panels and between speakers, so just please be appropriate with doing, and feel free to use sort of the back door to slide out. The restrooms are down around the corner, and there's a cafe as well. We have a pretty packed agenda because there's a lot of folks interested in this issue and this topic. So I'd like to introduce first my boss, Chair Nancy Sutley. Ms. Sutley is the chair of the White House Council on Environmental Quality and is principal environmental policy advisor to the president. She helps to develop and coordinate the administration's environmental and energy policies, and also served as a deputy mayor for energy and environment in the city of Los Angeles. Nancy?
Thank you so much, John, and a big welcome to all of you who've joined us here today and all of you online. And thank you so much for joining us today to honor these remarkable Iraq and Afghanistan veterans who are leading clean energy and climate security leaders and doing incredible things. And thank you especially to our champions of change, and thank you very much for your service, and to all of you for your service. I want to say that we're just so honored to have them here today, to have this opportunity to recognize their incredible work, these champions of change, and to hear their stories. I also want to extend a special thank you to all the organizations that helped make this event possible by nominating champions, by supporting their participation, and by organizing some outside engagement opportunities for them while they're here in Washington. And a special thanks to the Truman National Security Project and to their executive director, Mike Breen, who's here with us. The president certainly recognizes that climate change and clean energy are not just environmental issues, they're not just economic issues, they're national security issues as well. And nobody knows that better than those of you who've been on the front lines. Taking smart steps today to reduce carbon pollution, to invest in clean, efficient sources of energy, and to prepare for the impacts of climate change are economic and security imperatives for the United States. At home, we are already experiencing the impacts of climate change on our families and our businesses and our communities, whether it's stronger and more frequent storms, droughts, wildfires, that damage homes and livelihoods, that knock out electric grids, and heat waves that worsen smog levels and contribute to asthma attacks. And other countries, all countries, are contending with these issues as well. And no country can meet this challenge alone. And that's why it's so important for the United States to couple action at home with leadership internationally. So this past June, the President laid out his comprehensive plan to cut carbon pollution and to move our economy toward American-made clean energy sources, to prepare our communities for the impacts of climate change, and to lead international efforts to address this global challenge. As the President made clear, we have a moral obligation to our children and to future generations to ensure that we don't leave them a planet that's polluted and damaged. The President's climate plan includes a series of steady and responsible steps to address climate change, including new rules to limit carbon pollution from power plants. Today, we already have limits in place for arsenic and mercury and lead from power plants, but we don't have any limits on how much carbon pollution our power plants release. Modernizing our power plants by equipping them with the latest technology to reduce carbon emissions will ensure that the United States remains competitive with other countries and move our economy towards cleaner, more efficient sources of energy. These steps will spark the sort of innovation that drives economic growth and creates good-paying jobs here at home. Building a cleaner and more secure and more efficient energy future has been a priority for the administration since day one. We've already met the goal that the President laid out in 2008 to double renewable energy generation in this country. And to build on this progress, the President has pledged to double our generation from wind, solar, and geothermal sources again by 2020. With the support of the auto industry, we have also put in place the toughest fuel economy standards for vehicles. These standards will cut carbon pollution from our cars in half by 2025 and save the average driver more than $8,000 at the gas pump. As we take these and other important steps to reduce energy use and to cut pollution, we must also prepare for the impacts of climate change that are already being felt across the country. Many state and local leaders have been on the forefront of building climate resilience in their communities. Last Friday, the President announced a task force of governors and mayors and tribal leaders from across the country to advise the administration on how the federal government can respond to the needs of communities nationwide that are dealing with climate impacts. He also directed federal agencies to take a look at their programs across the board and find ways to make it easier for cities and towns to build smarter and stronger. And we're doing our part within the federal government to lead by example in our operations. The federal government is the single largest consumer of energy in the U.S. And maybe across the world. And within that, the Department of Defense is the largest consumer of energy within the federal government. Now, the federal government overall has about 500,000 buildings. We have 1.8 million civilian employees who commute to work every day. We have a fleet of over 600,000 vehicles and annually purchase billions of dollars of goods and services. So taking steps to increase the energy efficiency and the sustainability of federal operations is responsible leadership and responsible stewardship of taxpayer dollars. In 2009, the President set aggressive sustainability targets for federal agencies, and right now we're on track to reduce the federal government's greenhouse gas emissions by 28% by the year 2020 and save up to $11 billion in energy costs. And the Department of Defense has shown tremendous leadership in this area. Each service has set a goal of deploying 1 gigawatt of renewable energy for a total of 3 gigawatts by 2025. And they're partnering with leading experts in the private sector to achieve this goal. Let me mention an example, which is the Army Net Zero Initiative, in partnership with the Department of Energy, with the EPA, with the General Services Administration, and with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. The Army is using proven sustainability practices and innovative technologies to manage energy, water, and waste at Army installations. Since 2010, the Army Net Zero Initiative has transformed 17 installations into model communities of sustainability through achieving net zero energy, net zero water, or net zero waste. So that's a little bit of an overview of some of the ways that the administration has been working to support healthy and prosperous communities, to advance our energy security and build a clean energy economy for the 21st century. But we know that the real leaders are people here today, and we are here to honor you as champions. In answering our nation's call to service, many of you saw firsthand how the challenges of a changing climate and of energy availability can affect the safety and effectiveness of our troops and our national security. Our armed services members must confront challenges that range from the dangers and logistical complications of transporting vital energy supplies to international security concerns that can result from the changes in climate patterns and natural resource availability. And after returning home from service, many veterans are putting these experiences to work, using their specialized skills to advance energy efficiency and renewable energy, to make our communities more resilient to the effects of climate change, and to improve our nation's energy security. These efforts help make our troops, our communities, and our country safer and stronger. So to the champions here today, we thank you for your leadership, and we look forward to hearing more from you in just a few minutes. With that, I'd like to ask our champions of change to rise and be recognized as I call your name. And please hold your applause until all the champions have been named. So first, Avi Jacobson, Senior Sustainable Energy Coordinator for the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. Joe Knott, Director of Military Partnerships at the Compatible Land Foundation. Drew Sloan, Sales Director at O'Power. Joseph Kopser, CEO and co-founder of Ride Scout. Dave Belote, Vice President of Federal Business at Apex Clean Energy. Elizabeth Perez Halprin, President and founder of GC Green Incorporated. Kevin Johnson, Senior Manager of Mergers and Acquisitions at Acciona Energy North America. Nat Kramer, President and CEO of Clean Power Finance. Adam Cody, CEO of Thermal Energy Storage of Maine. Adam is in Afghanistan and is represented here today by his business partner, Kim Kenway. Robin Eckstein, Truman Project Defense Council member. Philip Green, President and founder of Green Powered Technology, and I might add, a fellow graduate of the Bronx High School of Science. Go Science. And Andrea Marr, Commissioning Energy Efficiency Engineer at McKinstry. Please give them a round of applause. And thank you, all of you, again, for your incredible work. We will hear more from you in just a few moments, and we really look forward to hearing your stories. So you can have a seat. We won't make you stand the whole time, although I think you're all good at standing at attention. But first, it's really my great honor to introduce our next speaker, and that's Dennis McDonough, the President's Chief of Staff. Prior to serving in this role, he served as Deputy National Security Advisor, and it is a great honor to have him here today to share a few words with you. Thank you.
Nancy, John, thank you both for those very nice remarks. Sharon, Denny, Mr. Chairman, Secretary Moniz, it's nice to see you all. Thanks for coming. Let me just say a word about John and Nancy and their team at CEQ for the incredible work that they do day in and day out, not only to make the federal government more sustainable, but in so doing, making sure that it's run more efficiently and more cheaply for the taxpayer, but also leaving a cleaner and safer environment for our kids, including my 3 kids and Sharon's 2 kids who spend a lot of time swimming together. let me just say that I'm really proud to be with that group that we just heard about today, to honor them as champions of change for advancing clean energy and climate security. Let me thank you in addition for obviously your service over the many years that precedes this equally valuable service to the nation and to our enduring strength. You embody the meaning of service. Not only have you served your country on the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan, but you've chosen to continue that service with the work you do on the front lines, as we call it here, of clean energy and climate security. The President made developing the twin goals of clean energy technology and preparing for the effects of climate change a priority for the sake of America's economic growth and for the health of future generations. He's called for a clean energy economy that will create jobs, spur growth, increase energy security, decrease dangerous carbon pollution, protect the interests of taxpayers, and make sure we're good stewards of the environment we want to pass down to our kids and, God willing, our grandkids. As Nancy mentioned, the President reinforced his commitment to these issues in June when he launched his Climate Action Plan on an exceedingly hot afternoon at Georgetown University. And I want to reiterate the significance of last Friday's release of the executive order on preparing the United States for the impacts of climate change, which established a task force on climate preparedness and resilience. The federal government has, as Nancy said, a critical role to play in supporting community-based preparedness and resilience efforts. It's our moral obligation to establish policies and prioritize investments that promote climate preparedness, protect critical infrastructure and public resources, support climate change science and research, and ensure that the federal operations and facilities continue to protect and serve citizens in what is clearly a changing climate. The President also recognizes the national security implications of climate change and has directed his NSS, the National Security Staff, to help lead that effort. Just last week, an independent report warned that climate change will increase the risk of everything from water shortages to starvation to drought and disease around the world over the course of this century. And that will have significant impacts on our national security and increasingly what we're asking of our men and women in uniform. The awardees here with us today understand that firsthand. They know the challenges of securing American energy and the threat of climate to the safety and effectiveness of our troops and national security. They have seen it. In fact, for some of today's awardees, you'll hear this yourself, it was the dangers and logistical challenges of transporting vital energy supplies in a combat zone that spurred their commitment to clean, more sustainable energy. I think the awardees today here would agree with me that their military service has provided them with the many skills they needed to excel in these new innovative careers. And all of our returning servicemen and women have the skills and training our country needs to ensure our continued growth and movement towards a cleaner and more sustainable economy. Employers know that. And as the President has said, if you can oversee a convoy of equipment and track millions of dollars in assets, you can run a company's supply chain or balance its books. If you can lead a platoon in the war zone, you can surely lead a team in the boardroom. That's why through the First Lady's Joining Forces initiative, companies have hired 290,000 veterans and military spouses and have pledged to hire another 435,000 by the end of 2018, in what is an exercise of informed self-interest, frankly. This initiative, along with the tax credits for companies that hire unemployed vets and wounded warriors that the President has fought so hard for, and other veteran hiring programs that he's launched, are testament to the President's commitment to our veterans, but a fundamental realization that our veterans have enormous potential to add to this growing economy. Federal agencies also understand the value of our veterans and have made hiring and enabling veterans a priority. The VA has obligated close to $279 million to veteran-owned small businesses for projects that advance clean energy and climate security, and have awarded $270 million in green management projects to service-disabled veteran-owned small business contractors. Programs like these help secure our energy future and empower our veterans who have served and sacrificed so much for us. As the President has said, No veteran who fought for our nation overseas should ever have to fight for a job when he or she gets home. So thank you for your military service. Thank you for your continued service through our efforts to advance clean energy and climate security. And God bless you for continuing to fight for our independence, our energy independence, here at home after all you have done and given, and all your families have done and given for us as you fought for our independence overseas. So I look forward to the proceedings today. Hats off to you guys. We, as the President would say, appreciate you, and we look forward to hearing what you, the lessons you have to learn with the rest of us. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. And so before moving on to the next speaker, I wanted to take a quick second and ask a question. Obviously, we've got a great group of champs today, but we also have a great group of government leaders, NGO leaders, private sector leaders. And so if you are a veteran or have served or are currently in uniform, just please raise your hand. I think if you look around, we've got a pretty incredible, that includes you, Senator Warner. So I'd like to introduce our Secretary of Energy, Dr. Ernest Moniz. He implements the President's all-the-above energy strategy, promoting American leadership in science and clean energy technology. The Department of Energy's mission is to support the President's goals in growing our economy, enhancing our security, and protecting the environment. And prior to coming to the administration, Dr. Moniz was the Cecil and Ida Green Professor of Physics and Engineering at MIT, where he led both the physics department and directed the MIT Energy Initiative and the MIT Laboratory for Energy and the Environment. Sir, thank you for your leadership, and thanks for joining us here today.
Well, thanks, John, and also I want to thank Nancy for not only for what's happening today, but for our partnership in trying to move clean energy and energy efficiency forward. All our distinguished guests, Senator Warner, my friend from nearby in our childhood, Denny McGinn, but especially our honorees. It's an honor really to be here to be able to talk with you. As John mentioned, I not so long ago was at MIT, and I have to say there we had also many interesting intersections of energy and the military at various levels. I'll always remember one of our graduate students, Lieutenant Colonel John Burpo. He is a West Point graduate. He had Purple Heart, Bronze Star. Came back as a PhD student in biomolecular materials, and he often talked about bridging the military and academic environments at that level, and noted how he was looked at a bit askance sometimes in the military, coming in with his master's degree in biomolecular materials, and then at MIT was viewed as the guy who did bad things to bad people. And he was a terrific guy. He's back on the faculty now at West Point, and his PhD work was, sorry for this riff, but I think it was really a great story. He trained viruses to self-organize lightweight materials, and he had this dream that eventually it was going to, among other applications, lead to more advanced drones, for example, with these materials. So it's really a terrific guy. When President Obama visited MIT in 2009 for a clean energy speech, not surprisingly, we had him in uniform and showing the president this work that he was doing. So it was really terrific. But I'll also mention other kinds of work. The Army, for example, has at MIT now a very successful Institute for Soldier Nanotechnology, and once again the idea is advanced research into technologies that can help the guy on the front lines, lightweight batteries and the like, very effective. And the chairman of my advisory committee then, and I'll end the anecdotes with this, was a very proud Marine named George Shultz. George went nowhere without carrying his collapsible photovoltaic blanket that was also designed for the soldier on the front line. So anyway, in our wonderful academic environment, I just want to say that I think we always had in our minds as well the idea that we could apply these advanced technologies to areas of great importance to our warfighters, as well as to, and I'll come back to this perhaps a little bit, as well as to helping the military in terms of saving energy, meaning saving money, and again, I'll come back a little bit to that. It's really quite a time to be at the Department of Energy. Some of you may, and some of you probably don't know the full range of the department's responsibilities. Clean energy is obviously one, as John said, but I might also mention we have nuclear weapons, nuclear materials, nuclear nonproliferation responsibilities, among other responsibilities. And the President's Georgetown speech, and Dennis is right, it was a hot day, has already been alluded to in terms of setting out the climate agenda going forward. But I'll just note that 6 days earlier in Berlin, he had also given another major policy speech, and this was on nuclear security. It was really the reprise of his very early Prague agenda in terms of nuclear security. Both of these issues, clean energy and climate and nuclear security, are very central, as I've said, to what we do at the Department of Energy. What I want to emphasize a little bit is the linkages. These are not totally separate areas. For example, and I saw Sherry Goodman here, as pointed out in the Center for Naval Analysis study back in 2006, that we should remember that climate change has very important implications for national security and for our armed forces. For example, as a threat multiplier in unstable parts of the world, which in turn can link to terrorism, to nuclear terrorism, and I think the military, the retired 4-stars who signed that report, were very early pointing out this very, very important linkage. Another linkage I'll mention, and then I'll go on to the climate agenda more specifically, is nuclear power. Is not, again, a link. Nuclear power certainly can be part of our low carbon agenda going forward. In fact, if you look at Japan right now, where exactly 0 of their 50 nuclear power plants are operating, they are in a very difficult position with regard to meeting climate targets. But if nuclear power is not done safely and securely, then again, it's a national security issue. And frankly, right now, Iran is the poster child for the potential of using a civilian nuclear power system as a pathway to nuclear weapons. So anyway, so these two agendas of climate and nuclear security are very much on our minds, including the important linkages between them. Now, turning to the climate agenda, again, it's a very exciting time for energy broadly in the United States. As you know, we have had a tremendous increase in our production of oil and natural gas domestically, principally through exploiting our shale resources. Our oil imports are at the lowest level in 2 decades. In fact, just last year, we increased our domestic oil production by 1 million barrels a day, principally through 2 reservoirs, one in North Dakota and one in Texas. What I want to now, reduced oil imports obviously links to the long-standing energy security agenda of this country, not to mention balance of payments agenda. But what I do want to emphasize is, even as we increase our oil production, we continue to have a very, very strong focus on reducing our oil dependence, which is also part of that security agenda. And there we have three main thrusts. One is efficiency, and the President Obama, I'm sure as you know, really took an historic leap forward in terms of our vehicle energy efficiencies with CAFE standards that essentially will double our vehicle efficiency by 2025, north of 50 miles per gallon. And we are already seeing the benefits of that in terms of reduced carbon emissions as our vehicle fleet becomes more efficient. The second thrust there, and this is one where the Department of Energy is a partner with the Department of Defense and the USDA, advanced biofuels. And in particular for the Department of Defense, the goal is to move towards especially advanced drop-in biofuels that will really be compatible with our existing military equipment. And there, by the way, I would say that we're still not there in terms of cost parity, but a huge amount of progress is being made. And this is the decade where, in fact, our innovation, I believe, will be paying off in terms of cost competitiveness of many of the clean energy technologies that we are developing. The third thrust area in terms of reduced oil dependence is electrification of vehicles. And there, again, we are making, I think, more progress than is generally recognized when people look up. This year, we are likely to hit 100,000 electric vehicles in this country, doubling of last year. And it doesn't take too many more doublings for this to actually make a very, very significant difference. So that's one part of our energy picture. As I mentioned, natural gas production way up. We have reclaimed our position as the world's #1 producer of natural gas. It's ironic that only a few years ago, people were talking and people were investing in the enormous LNG import infrastructure that we were going to be requiring, and now the issue is how do you convert those into export facilities to send natural gas to other places. And I want to mention that that has economic benefits, of course, but we should not overlook things like the geopolitical implications. For example, I was in Japan until Saturday, and there, with their at least temporary turn-off of the nuclear fleet, they are, of course, desperate for natural gas, very, very interested in American natural gas because of our pricing structure. And we should remember, Japan, even in its difficult times post-Fukushima with no nuclear, has been, as is generally the case, a very strong ally, for example, in turning down their oil imports from Iran. So these have clean energy and geopolitical implications. And in the United States, the substitution of natural gas, which is low priced, for coal, has accounted for half of our CO2 reductions. And since the President announced in 2009 our goal of a 17% reduction in CO2 emissions, we are halfway to that goal in less than 5 years. And again, natural gas, big part of that. Now, of course, as already mentioned, our strategy is all of the above. And besides those that I've mentioned, nuclear power remains another area that we are emphasizing, in particular with some novel technology for so-called small modular reactors that we hope will have tremendous promise for deployment in the U.S. and other places. But of course, the renewable and efficiency agenda, very, 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 very critical. And here, I would refer you all to a small document called Revolution ... that we have on our website. I put it there about 2 months ago. And there are four figures which tell the whole story, and I invite your attention to those. The thesis of revolution ... now is that there remains in many parts of the energy dialogue still this idea that renewables are and always will be 5 or 10 years away. We are saying, look up, things are changing. We think the revolution is coming now, driven by dramatic cost reductions in these technologies. So what you will find in this little document, four figures: one for wind, one for PV, one for LEDs, and one for electric vehicle batteries. And all the curves, all the figures have two curves. One is, and these are just data, cost reduction. Impressive. In 5 years, LEDs, for example, 85% cost reduction. PVs, and we can argue over what component of this might be an oversupply, glut, et cetera, but the fact is photovoltaic modules for 75 cents a watt. Even electric vehicle batteries, a factor of 60% reduction in cost in 5 years. Still expensive for the mass market, but dramatically decreasing, certainly to the place where things like plug-in hybrids, suddenly the batteries don't look to be such a big obstacle. And of course, if you got $60,000, $75,000, you can get a great Tesla, and that is one hell of a performance car. So it's a different business model from the Volt, shall we say? So one curve in each of these figures is this dramatic cost reduction. The other curve is the concomitant incredible rate of increase of deployment. So these deployments are really coming, and again, my statement that the revolution is now. We think we are storming the barricades. Comes from when you see the large incumbent energy companies paying attention as to how their business models are being challenged by the deployment of these technologies. A clear example is what you see going on in many states today with regard to utilities, distributed photovoltaics, and net metering. Without taking sides, there are clearly issues on both sides of that argument. But the fact is, the business model is being challenged by a combination of deployment of clean energy and the results of efficiency and conservation, which have the use of electricity essentially flat in this country. So that's some of what's going on. I'm getting paged. Well, let me say a few more words, if I may, about the DOE-DOD partnership. There are many aspects. I've alluded to some of them already, but I do want to mention particularly emphasis in training, in the role that many of our veterans are playing in the energy arena and can play. And this goes from PhDs like John Burpo, who I mentioned earlier. I should have brought him here, actually, to this, to the entrepreneurial community in clean energy. And I know at least some of you met last night in an energy entrepreneurial context. To use of operational skills in, for example, the enormous needs we're going to have in terms of rebuilding an energy infrastructure for the 21st century that, in particular, as Dennis emphasized, not only do we need to move energy around, but we need also to be resilient. In fact, I'm going to take an aside and say that at the Department of Energy, we are, of course, very, very attentive to the risks posed by climate-induced extreme weather events, et cetera. It was mentioned, of course, the President's executive order on a Friday, for example. But what I also want to emphasize in my aside is that we are trying to put together an integrated strategy for resilience that includes multiple threats to the energy infrastructure, extreme weather, but also cyber threats, threats of physical attack on the infrastructure, and the threats posed by the interdependence of different infrastructures like electricity, fuels, information, water, et cetera. So this is a big challenge, and one that's, again, going to involve lots and lots of skilled people. In 2013, say that 25% of the Department of Energy's hires were veterans. And as Dennis says, this is a self-serving approach, given the quality of these people. Actually, since 2010, we've trained more than 30,000 workers in things like smart grid skills, using ARRA. Of course, veterans are part of that. But I also say going to things like, again, using some operational skills. We also talk with our labor unions, for example, in terms of things like helmets to hard hats. We think these are all extremely important programs going forward. So I'm going to stop at this point, but thank you again for your prior and your future service, as Dennis said, in serving our independence goals in so many different directions. So thank you very much. Can I take the question? Okay. I'd be happy to take one or two questions or comments or statements of outrage, including from the youngest members of our audience, who I hear making comments.
Morning, Mr. Secretary. Can you compare the politics of being on the MIT faculty with the politics of your current position?
As Henry Kissinger said, there's nothing more vicious than faculty meetings because the stakes are so small. But it's good training, right? Another question? Or? Oh, they're in the back. Okay.
Yes, good morning. My name is Dr. Green. I'm an educator. One of the problems we see is that there's going to be a change in demographic in this country. It's not a problem anyway. But most of those who will be the majority do not have the STEM discipline to advance our nation. Thus, we are dependent upon foreign workers who are skilled in the STEM field. Is the Department of Navy or Department of Defense addressing such a problem with respect to energy?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about the Department of Energy, at least, and the administration, and the answer is yes. I'll mention two programs. One is a program, it's called C2E. I won't try to remember what it stands for, but it's fundamentally a Women in Clean Energy program that came from the Clean Energy Ministerial process. So it's an international process. Actually, in my previous life at MIT, we were very pleased to serve as the host of a Department of Energy program started just over 1 year ago to bring more women into clean energy. And now, and that's been very successful, and we have ambassadors who also go out to, they are accomplished mid-career people generally, and women, in this case mainly women, who go out to schools and are committed to help recruit more women into these fields. And now this fall, we have adapted that to a minorities in clean energy program that we started out of our Office of Economic Development and Diversity. And actually, this all started kind of spontaneously in a hearing in which Congressman Bobby Rush raised these issues. And in fact, in a few weeks here at the White House, we'll be having a public event on this minorities in clean energy, and it'll be modeled much like the women in clean energy. And of course, those are overlapping sets, and we'll be having ambassadors as well to make sure that we can build the workforce that we need. So thank you all very much. Bye.